Hello, everybody. My name is Jose, and I work as a guide for the Central Park Conservancy. On behalf of everyone here, I'd like to welcome you all on our weekly walk. Now, today we're going to be exploring the pond, which is on the southern end of Central Park for today. So just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. All participants are muted, but you can use the chat feature to say hello and comment. If you have any questions, you can use the Q&A function, and my colleagues Juan and Ryan are going to be answering them as we go along. And of course, feel free to let us know in the chat where you're coming from. The images, of course, you will see today, these were taken by myself within the past week, but you'll also see some historic images, and these are going to be taken from the photo archives of the Library of Congress, the New York Public Library, and the archives of the Central Park Conservancy. Now, closed captioning has also been enabled. If you don't want to see any of the captions, simply press the CC button and subtitle settings at the bottom of your screen. Okay, so the Central Park Conservancy is basically the nonprofit that's tasked with taking care of the park. And we've been doing this since 1980. Now, our official mission is to preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and well-being of all. Okay, so before we begin, let's go ahead and go over our route for today. So we're going to be starting off at Central Park South by the 6th Avenue intersection, and we're going to talk about some of the statues and monuments in that area. Then we're going to head down the steps towards the pond's southern shore, and we're going to head east from there, exploring some of the interesting natural points along the way. And then we're going to head north, and finally we'll end things off over at Gapstow Bridge. Okay, so right now we're here at the southern entrance of the park where Central Park South meets 6th Avenue. Now, if you're a local New Yorker, then you might know it as just 6th Avenue. However, officially, this is actually called the Avenue of the Americas, and that's the name that you're going to find all over the street signs. And that's because it was renamed back in 1945 by Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia as a way to attract consulates from Western Hemisphere countries. Now, that name never really caught on among longtime New York residents, but around here, you can still definitely see the remains of that post-war celebration of North and South America. Now, the name Avenue of the Americas really starts to make more sense once you look at the monuments around this area. So here you're going to see these very large equestrian statues dedicated to Latin American figures. And these were actually put up right after 6th Avenue was renamed after the Second World War. Now, the statue that we're looking at right now, this is of Jose de San Martin, who was an Argentine general and helped Argentina, Chile, Peru gain independence from Spain in the early 19th century. Now, this statue was placed here in 1951. And just a short walk over, we have Simón Bolivar, the liberator of Venezuela, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Panama. This one was sculpted by Sally James Farnham, and it moved here to this area also in 1951. And just a few yards west, we have Cuba's own Jose Marti, here at the moment of his death during the Battle of Dos Rios in 1895. Now, this statue was sculpted by Anna Hyatt Huntington, and this was dedicated in 1965, essentially completing the trio of Latin American figures along the northern terminus of the Avenue of the Americas. Okay, so now let's go ahead and make our way down the steps, and we'll start heading down towards the pond. Now, if we look back up towards where we started off from, you can see that we're actually several feet below street level. And there's actually a purpose behind this. Basically, by having park visitors descend down from the street towards the pond, it was meant to transport them away from the hectic pace of city life and into the more relaxed atmosphere of Central Park. I think that's actually pretty genius because, as we can see right here, it really gives you that sense that you're not really even in the largest and busiest city in the country anymore. Things are definitely much quieter down here, and this is going to be a place where you'll often see office workers just out enjoying a nice lunch break. Maybe you'll see visitors, folks just wanting an escape from the hustle and bustle of urban life. Now, right along the stonework, you're going to find this very interesting bas relief map of the pond. And if you pour a little bit of water on this area, or on this map rather, or if you're here on a wet, rainy day like I was, you're going to see that the pond actually appears on this map, and you get this really cool, almost lifelike effect. Now, this bas relief map was added back in 2001 to essentially commemorate the restoration of the pond that year. Now, before it was restored, the pond was actually kind of drab looking, and it really didn't have as much of a natural looking shoreline as it does today. So this is what it looked like before 2001. And as you can see, there weren't too many shoreline plantings. During restoration efforts that year, the pond was basically drained, and we here at the Conservancy added lots of new plants, and we even added an island that was accessible only by birds and other wildlife. So here's the shore of the pond now. So you can see all the new plantings here, and they definitely give the pond a more natural quality. So there are going to be things like reeds and carefully placed rocks. It's almost as if it wouldn't be too out of place in a countryside setting. And here you can see some ostrich. Now they've got these large green fronds that make them look like ostrich feathers, hence the name. And these are especially showy in early summer. You'll see these a lot when you're hiking by lakes or maybe swamps out here on the east coast of the United States, but they definitely add a nice touch to the pond here in Central Park. Okay, so let's continue on with the walk. So as you can see from the map, the pond has this very interesting shape too. Right now, if you look towards the center, you can see the Hallett Nature Sanctuary, which is a large wooded rocky hill bordering the water. Now the Hallett, as some of you might know, is actually a really excellent place to go bird watching. And sometimes you're going to find some pretty interesting ones make an appearance at the pond. And here we have the black-crowned night heron. This is actually a relatively common bird species here in North America, but it's not something that you're going to find every day on the streets of Manhattan. The black-crowned night heron, they tend to stick to wetland habitats like estuaries and marshes, so this little guy would definitely feel right at home here at the pond. Now, if you look very closely, you can see that it's got these two long white plumes on its head that it actually uses to attract any potential mates. Okay, so we're continuing on now towards our next stop. And right now we're going to head east along the southern shore of the pond. And just around the pond's southeastern corner, you're going to find this nice little spot to take in the views. Now, this area is definitely quite a favorite spot for many park visitors. And you're even able to see a little bit of the Hallett Nature Sanctuary just right across the water. This area actually used to have a boat landing, and from here you could actually ride one of these swan boats, and these swan boats would take you around the pond for just a nickel. Now, if you're familiar with Boston, Massachusetts, these are actually quite similar to those found at the Public Garden Pond in that city. And that's actually located in what's called the Emerald Necklace, which itself was designed by none other than Frederick Olmsted. Unfortunately, these swan boats aren't actually around anymore. They were only in use up until about 1924. But they were definitely quite popular back then, especially in the summertime. And if you were visiting Central Park for the very first time, or if you were a longtime New Yorker just wanting to kind of enjoy a nice Saturday afternoon in the park, this was definitely at the top of your to-do list of activities in the summer. Now, that actually brings me to our poll of the day. So let me go ahead and launch our poll right now. All right, so summer is upon us here in New York City. And of course, there are countless things to do at the park when the weather is warm. Today, we actually want to know, do you have a favorite summertime activity in Central Park? And of course, it doesn't really have to be in Central Park at all. My favorite is to actually go for a long walk or a hike Sometimes I like to just kind of relax on a bench and just kind of take in the sun. Now, I know there are definitely a lot more options than what I've listed. So you can, if you don't see your favorite activity listed, you can definitely let us know in the comments. And of course, these don't have to be just in Central Park. There are, of course, many neighborhood parks that I'm always fond of kind of exploring around in my own neighborhood as well. All right, so it looks like most of us have already voted. So let me go ahead and share the results with all of you right now. So it looks like actually 74% of us like to go for a walk or a hike as well, which is also definitely one of my favorites. And of course, some of us also like to do other things as well, including read a book / newspaper, exercise, picnic, all that good stuff. Of course, you can pretty much do anything in your local neighborhood park or, of course, in Central Park as well. Okay, so as we make our way right around the bend, we're gonna make a left turn right where this large rock outcrop is located. This, of course, is Manhattan schist, and it's pretty much found all over Manhattan Island. This composes much of the bedrock of the city. I happen to really like this particular one just because it has these very pronounced striations. Striations are basically the lines that you can see right on the rock. Now, one cool thing about this section of Central Park is that since it's so close to the streets of Manhattan, you get some of the most amazing views of the skyscrapers and buildings of Midtown, just kind of juxtaposed with the natural beauty of the pond. So right now we're actually looking west. Right along the shoreline, you're going to find this Virginia sweet spire. This shrub is actually often planted right by water bodies as a form of erosion control. Thanks to its hardy roots. As you can see in the image, it also has these fragrant and very interesting looking flowers, and these are going to be called racemes. That's RACEME. Now, while we walk around the promenade, if you actually look hard enough, you might be able to spot this very small memorial carefully hidden on a small rock right by some shrubs. Now, this is going to be dedicated to the mother of a very generous Central Park donor, whose donation in the late 1990s endowed the pond landscape. Now, I'm really quite fascinated with some of the hidden secrets that you're going to find around here in the park. And this memorial, to me, was definitely a new discovery. Okay, so moving further along north, and we come to this fork in the road. We're going to be taking the roadway on the left, and that, of course, that's going to lead us towards our next stop on our walk. So from here, we're going to continue to kind of explore the eastern shoreline of the pond, and then we'll end things off over at Gapstow Ridge, northern end. Now, as I was kind of making my way through the pond, I found this very lovely scene right on the water. These, of course, are three of the most common forms of wildlife here in the park. So you can see turtles on the left-hand side, geese, and ducks. They're, of course, all sharing a very crowded space in a very small rock. But I just thought it was kind of lovely to see this. And up ahead, we're going to start to see a glimpse of our next stop. So let's go ahead and continue down the pathway now. And just off towards our left, if you actually know where to look, there's this really nice rocky platform that's actually perfect for taking in the views. It's also one of the best spots to take photos of the pond as well. Now this is going to be called Gapstow Bridge. If you've never been to Central Park before, you might have actually seen this bridge. And that's because it's been featured prominently in movies and TV shows like Home Alone 2, Devil Wears Prada, Sex and the City, and Gossip Girl. Part of what really makes this such a beloved bridge is the fact that it sits in one of the busiest yet most gorgeous sections of Central Park. Of course, you also get nice, very stunning views of the surrounding neighborhoods. All in all, I just think it's kind of the quintessentially New York landmark. Now, this rustic stone bridge was built back in 1896, and this was built by the architectural firm Howard and Caldwell. Before that, Gapstow Bridge actually looked a little bit different. Now, this older incarnation of the bridge, this was designed by Jacob Ray Moll, and it was constructed in the 1870s using a combination of stone, wood and cast iron. It was definitely a very unique looking work of art, but unfortunately, it did start to deteriorate after a few years. So it was eventually replaced by the current stone structure that we now know and love. And of course, down on the left-hand side of the image, you can actually see one of the pond's swan boats that were in use at the time. Okay, so moving along now, we're going to take these stone steps up towards the bridge, and we're going to check out the amazing views from atop that bridge. And along the way, we get to pass by one of my favorite trees in the southern end of the park. So this is a rather large and rather old red maple tree, and it forms this really beautiful canopy along the promenade. It's also really quite stunning during the fall, and it adds such a nice touch of scarlet to the autumn landscape around this area. Okay, from here, let's go ahead and make a left turn over at this intersection. And let's go and make our way to the top of this bridge. Even though it was really kind of a wet and humid day out, that actually didn't stop visitors from admiring this famous bridge. Being at the southern end of Central Park, you're always going to see folks around here. You can see tourists, locals, commuters, basically people of all backgrounds. You can definitely see why they want to kind of gather right here on top of the Capstone Bridge. The views from this bridge are really, really quite spectacular. Now, before we end things off, let's actually just go ahead and kind of take a moment to admire this view. Not only do you have this bucolic, natural-looking landscape with the water and the rocky terrain and the lush green foliage, but you also get some of New York's most famous buildings in the background. So you can see the Plaza Hotel right at the center, and you can even see some of the super tall towers that are now being built around Midtown. And that, I think, is pretty much the pond and basically Central Park in a nutshell. It's nature and the city all rolled into one. And with that, I thank you all for visiting the park with me today. Now, don't forget to check out our other programs as well. Our in-person tours are now officially back, and we do still have a few openings available. So be sure to check out the chat section for more details. We definitely look forward to being back in the park with you folks. So definitely come and say hello to us on our in-person walking tours of Central Park. So we're going to keep the room open for any last questions, but otherwise, from the Central Park Conservancy, stay safe and be well. Have a good day, folks.